Okay, so welcome everyone to September 29th, 2020, new Edward Little High School Building Committee. Karen Matthews not able to be with us tonight, so I'm going to just welcome everyone and turn things over to Mark Lee and Lisa Sawin to take us through the agenda.
Great, thank you, Adam. And I think Lisa's going to share her screen, so I don't know, Adam, if you need to pull the triggers or pull the levers behind the scene for that. But we thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. This is one of the remaining building committee meetings before we get to a pretty exciting part of the project, which is sending it out to contractors to bid on the project. So we're getting ever so close to that, which is really exciting if you think about the journey we've been on and to finally get to this point. So it's pretty exciting. It's a lot of work on our end to button up all the drawings, and that's what we're in the midst of right now. But we have some items that we want to share with everyone, and largely these follow some items that we shared with the Department of Education today. We met with them most recently this morning and provided them an update, and we'll provide this committee the update we provided them. And we'll kind of conclude with the current schedule that we have set out. It hasn't changed from the last one, but these dates get closer and closer now. And so we'll keep everyone abreast of what those are. And if they do change, we'll certainly make sure everyone knows. But they're holding steady right now. We're pretty excited to be at this point, thinking that in a couple months we'll launch it into the general contractor bidding climate. So with that, and just a reminder, if you do have questions as we move along, we do look for raised hands on the participant tab, or if you also just raise your hand physically, we'll try to keep an eye open for those too. And so please certainly feel free to interrupt us if you have a question as we're moving through the material. So without further ado, Lisa Sawin, my colleague, partner here.
Thank you, Mark, and good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. So welcome. It's hard to believe it's the end of September. And we want to just give everybody an update on where we're at. And as Mark said, some information that we shared with the Department of Education today. So our general overview will be commissioning update, recordation update, general contractor or GC pre-qualification update, alternates and topics of interest, and schedule. And so with that, we'll jump right into the agenda, kind of building off of previous building committee meetings that we've had. If there are meetings that you missed and you need other information, by all means, please let us know. Commissioning update. We have a commissioning agent on board. The commissioning agent is Sparhawk. They have, since our last meeting, been brought on board and completed their initial commissioning review. We just received their comments yesterday and are going through those. So we're excited to have them as part of the team. And the next steps in regards to that are we'll complete our review of their comments and responding to their comments, and then we'll have a meeting to discuss with them what's incorporated and what may not be incorporated in the project and why. So that will be the next steps in regards to commissioning. Recordation update. And I believe these dates are in flux and maybe have changed since we put this slide together. Kleinfelder is on board to do the recordation of the documentation of the existing Edward Little High School. And that will begin on October 14th, not the 10th, as the slide says here. And then general contractor pre-qualification. So the advertisements have been put in the paper, soliciting general contractors that would be interested in being pre-qualified to bid on the project. So they have a qualifications they need to send up to the state to be reviewed and make sure that they have all the qualifications to take on a project of this size. So whether that's being able to be bonded or have the experience, there's a list of criteria that they need to comply with in order just to bid on the project, which is great. So we can make sure that we vet those who are bidding on the project. The documents have been submitted to DOE. It has been advertised. The qualifications are due on October 2nd. And speaking with the DOE today, we've got several interested contractors that have already submitted the pre-qualifications. And so we look forward to having a complete list on October 2nd to be able to share with everyone. And from there, we'll review the qualifications and notify those applicants. And then those applicants that are notified that they're pre-qualified, will be able to bid on the project when it comes out. The next slide is on alternates. So currently we are tracking 11 alternates in the project. And as a reminder, what alternates are is they help us ensure that the project comes in within bid on bid day. And so we can look at it as items that are in the drawings that these alternates would remove from the scope to bring within the cost within alignment. And that's the way that we're pursuing them right now, is called deduct alternates. Another way to do it is you look at things to add into the project. They're really one and the same. It's just how you document them in the project. And so several items are items that have been requested by the Department of Education, or were things that were not included in the original concept scope. And so we want to be able to have a separate price for those. So going down the list of the 11, one of them is the second artificial turf field. One is the wand doors, which are accordion folding security doors in the vestibule. Three is the courtyard landscaping and hardscape. So having a simplified walkway through there, knowing that the landscaping can be done at a later date. Number 4 is theater system. So reduction in the enhancement. So this isn't removing the system itself, but some reductions to that system. And we're working through the detail of that with them right now. We're pretty close to getting that nailed down. Site athletic field and court lighting. So in the original project, we had the stadium with lights. And so there's other lights shown right now at the multi-purpose baseball and tennis courts. And so those would be part of the alternate. As well as in the concept, we had the concessions building and the stadium, but the storage buildings are going to be an alternate, and the softball and baseball dugouts as well. Number 8 is rubber floor tile in the classroom. So this keeps the rubber floor tile in the hallways or corridors of the building, but looks at providing an alternate material at a lesser cost in the classrooms if need be. And then number 9 is exploring an alternate exterior siding material. Again, looking at reducing cost if we need to on bid day. And then number 10 is the material of the frames around the doors, going from aluminum to hollow metal. And then number 11 is Rulon. So it's a wood ceiling system that we have at the classroom nodes. So keeping it in the main public spaces, but looking at maybe some areas of reduction. So that's kind of a quick run through of the list. And again, these are items that we are showing in the project right now. And if on bid day we need to get the project within alignment of cost, we look at these different alternates to assist us with that. So topics of interest. So these are different topics that we have come up later in the project in regards to just school design in general, as we start to get ready for the state board, the areas that we know we typically get questioned on. So we just wanted to give a little refresher to everybody, as well as a new one that's come up, which is COVID. Everyone's asking different ways to which we have thought about how this building responds to that. So I will go through those items. So safety and security, this is just a very high level report on sort of our general approach to safety and security. And this is based on, Mark and I have presented nationally on the topic of safety and security and designing for schools. And what's great about us being able to do that throughout the nation is we've really opened a global conversation from many different stakeholders across the nation, whether it be facilities managers or principals or superintendents, and really understanding that we all are approaching this very like-minded, and that it's a balance between having open 21st century schools as well as implementing measures of safety and security to balance that openness and that secureness as well. And so a lot of guidance we take from the Department of Education. They have guidance on this, as well as what we call the PASS guidelines. And that's that rainbow colored graphic you see in the upper right-hand corner. And it starts to illustrate layers. And so that's really the approach we take, are layers of safety and security throughout the building. And so the lists that you see here are just really touching on visibility and transparency and connectedness. So it's a strategic approach to the overall design. Single point of entry. It wants to be welcoming. And it's a process of design. So we've worked very closely with Scott and the school department on aligning the design with the policies and procedures. And we've also worked closely with the first responders to understand their needs in this process. And making sure, pride of ownership. So making sure that we have the ability to define public and private spaces in the school and separate between those two for after-hour use. And social emotional connectedness. So a lot of it has to do with just the perception of feeling safe in the building, feeling connected, feeling welcome, feeling like it's their home. Layers of access control and visibility. So making sure that we have different layers of people being able to access the building securely, and also having visibility both with eyes and cameras. Again, the feeling of safety, diversity of learning spaces, an integrated communication plan, and education around the safety and security features. Places within the classroom that provide a sense of safety, and then designing safety throughout with architecture. And so again, just a high level sort of the approach we've taken globally on the design. And then also just revisiting the fact that we've involved the students in this dialogue early on or earlier in the process, and really interesting just to hear what comes to mind when they talk about safety and security. And when we had a group, it was an incredible group, about 75, 80 students really engaged in this process. And when we asked them what comes to mind when you hear the word safety, their responses were protection, welcoming, open, comfortable, locks, familiar, and clean. And so again, it's this idea of that balance of really feeling like a welcoming, space, and not this idea of it feeling closed and locked and prison-like. And you can see the survey, this common responses from the survey, high responses on protection and feeling protected, but right up there was comfortable, welcoming, familiar, and clean. Other responses: having trust, hard to enter but easy to exit, not being worried about threats, locks, secure building, warmth, bright and open. So definitely a very interesting dialogue with the students, and the same with the word of security. and their responses to that. And we had presented this information a while back to everyone as well. So just wanted to revisit the diverse approach that we're taking, as well as really engaging all of the stakeholders in this process. And when it comes to security, what they have listed is support safety is organized. So wayfinding is really important. Police SRO presence, locked and watched entrances. So we wanted to revisit that and share that with everyone. And then another topic that comes up is sustainability. And so when we head to the state board, definitely an important topic that always comes up. So just wanted to recap on the great work that the Sustainability Committee had done early on. And this is the vision and goal statement that subcommittee came up with. I really just read it to everyone, maybe not be able to see it at home, but the Sustainability Committee supports investments in advanced technologies today to reduce fiscal and environmental impact, energy reliance in the future. This will be accomplished through assuring the design of a facility that is highly sustainable, identifying systems that allow the building to run effectively and efficiently, and resulting in cost effectiveness. Requires lowest maintenance support and resources by promoting building material and system longevity, and is ecologically friendly and minimizes environmental impact. So one thing we visited with that committee was how do we tell this story? And the story of sustainability is illustrated through two major pillars, according to the group. One is education, and the other is efficient systems that contribute to indoor air quality and thermal comfort. And so the education component is illustrated a lot in the areas where we have some of the career technology spaces that are related to the building trades, exposing some of the systems above the ceilings. And we also talked about making sure that there's areas for monitors or TV screens throughout the school, to where the students and teachers can help graphically depict the story of sustainability around this project and convey that back to the end user. Efficient systems that contribute to indoor air quality and thermal comfort. So we'll kind of go over the systems that were selected, and this was a collective effort with our mechanical engineer and the sustainability committee to arrive at these systems. And so what was arrived at for heating and cooling plant was a geothermal system. Air delivery was vertical displacement ventilation in the classrooms, and underfloor air delivery in the auditorium, and a more traditional overhead delivery in the other spaces. The displacement ventilation increase in ventilation effectiveness in the classrooms, which is a great thing. Space heating classrooms and offices. There's a combination of a heating coil at VAV boxes and radiant floors, and we have demand control ventilation. And we have efficient systems that look at the VFD and the high efficiency motors and the building automation and building control automation system. And then also being ready for any future alternative energy. So we've designed the roof to accommodate PVs in the future and the weight of those PVs. We've also have exterior sunshades, which allow us to block out some of the sun at different times when we don't want it directly in the space. Still get some good daylight, but help knock down some of the heat. And the high output light fixtures and low flow plumbing fixtures. And last but not least, sustainable products such as locally sourced brick coming right here from Auburn. And so just to highlight a couple of those items, the displacement ventilation provides a high temperature, low velocity supply of air, relying on the buoyancy forces of air to drive air motion. As you can see in the diagram here, more traditional systems look to kind of mix the air when the displacement delivers it low and pulls it out high, which helps with the indoor air quality of the building. And we always like to highlight this study done in 2000 where they looked at multiple schools that had installed this system, and they had a 69% reduction in asthma for attending schools with displacement systems. And then the geothermal heating and cooling. So this graphic starts to show you how that system works, and it uses the Earth's temperature to provide high efficiency heating and cooling, and that significantly reduces the use of other fuel sources. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Mark to take us through some of the features of how we've started to address COVID, which has come on board late in our design process here, but be happy to speak to some of those areas.
Thank you very much. And the importance of indoor air quality, in addition to just creating healthy environments, has also played a significant role as we think about how in our current situation we have understood the spread within enclosed spaces of the virus. And so I don't know if people have seen some of these videos that show how the air moves through a space and how the virus can sort of affect the different occupants of a space. But the idea that we have displacement ventilation in the classrooms in many ways assists in creating less opportunity to transmit. And it does that because, as you had seen on the graphic that Lisa had shown, the fresh air is coming in at a very low velocity and it's coming in low in the room. And instead of it being collected at sort of and sent down from the ceiling and then mixed and then sent up, it gradually lifts up in the space. And so it moves it away from the breathing zone, and that's not only the breathing zone of the person who may be infected, but it moves it away from the path of others in the room itself. And so it's the pathway that the air moves that is it has less chance for transmission within a space. Now that is no fail-safe method to ensure that no one in a room gets COVID, but it assists in not or in limiting the opportunity of it through air stream in the room itself. And so that's the first thing. And so in addition to that, it's a much healthier way of delivering fresh air into the space itself. The other thing that we have seen from CDC with respect to preparations in HVAC systems is the inclusion of a much higher or a much finer filter, and so those are measured with MERV, and take me a minute to remember what the acronym for MERV is, but understand the higher the number, the finer the filter is itself. And so the MERV 8 with a MERV 13 filter means that it's getting a much greater degree of filtration before before the fresh air comes into the space itself. And so the particles, the moisture particles, oftentimes that the virus travels with, get trapped in the finer filters. Public hand washing sinks. So this is, we see the signs everywhere in terms of ensuring that there are hand sanitizing stations, whether it's an alcohol-based liquid or it's a hand wash as in a traditional sink. And so we have those positioned throughout, and the DOE has been very cognizant of that fact and asked us to include one that we hadn't had in one of the larger common spaces. And so that's a response specifically to COVID. Water bottle refilling stations, and so those are sensor stations, and so they don't require someone to actually touch the surface of the filler. And most recently, we've seen an increase from manufacturers in the touchless drinking fountains. And so instead of having to push a button to activate the bubbler on a drinking fountain or a water cooler, that now is something that manufacturers have adapted and provide, and we're seeing those roll out in many of the drinking fountain lines. And so in addition to that, we include touchless fixtures, other plumbing fixtures, including lavatories, flushometers, and the like in toilet rooms. The common practice we have seen right now also is ensuring that the nurse areas have an isolation room. So if there's a suspected case, it gives a place to quarantine within the building itself. And so we have several exam rooms in the clinic area right now, in the nurse area, and so those are used to isolate, and those do exhaust air that doesn't mix with other air streams, and so again, it's part of that isolating in those rooms themselves. And then the last one seems a little odd, but it's actually a practical application. We actually provided in the vestibule. It's a good-sized vestibule. Has a at the main entrance to the building, and it actually has a series of cubbies. And so, if someone needs to come in and drop something off, they don't need to enter the building. They can simply place it in the cubby, and then that can be picked up by the administration and brought into the building itself. And so it has the opportunity to limit people coming into the building unnecessarily. And so that's another way in which just a simple passive technology to think of ways of limiting the spread. So those are some of the things that we're right now incorporating into the design to address COVID. Some of the things that we've also heard are strategies like creating directional corridors, and there's certainly going to be opportunities to look at that should we need to in the 2.5 years from now when the school opens up. But most of the corridors are large enough that we can socially distance in passing in the corridor itself, and so they're most of them are around 9 or 10 feet, some of them much wider than that as well in the larger, more traveled areas of the building. Any questions on that? All right, well, with that, I'll let Lisa guide us through the schedule and next steps here as I said at the beginning, as we really get towards the very end of this design phase and construction document phase that we've been in for some time.
Thank you, Mark. And MERV is minimum efficiency reporting value.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Just rolls right out. So schedule next steps. Similar to what we presented in the past, we are getting closer to moving the bar here, if you will, to the next step within our process and with the DOE. And so construction documents are still being produced right up until bid day, and so looking to go out to bid later this year, and we we'll look to award that probably within the new year when construction will begin as well. At that time, we'll do what's called final funding approval. So the state will look at where the bids came in, what the budget was for the project, and kind of reconcile the funding between local and state funds. And then the building will get underway. And the building construction will be completed in 2023. And the demo of the existing building will occur after folks have moved out of that building, and site work will be completed in 2024. So the entire project looks to wrap up the summer of 2024. We have our next steps. Our building committee meeting is tonight, and we'll look to schedule the next one after this. I think I had put out a date on the agenda, which would be in October. I believe I put out the 27th, so we can check to see if that works for folks. Our construction documents, the 100% review set, which it goes up to the state on October 14th, is the set that secures our spot on the agenda with the state construction committee. And a lot happens between now and then, and so we'll be working closely with the DOE, and that is the date that we are targeting at this time. Tentatively, the construction committee is going to meet on October 30th and the state board on November 4th. There's been some moving of those dates. They're usually pretty set in stone, but with the holiday in November, this meeting has been moved around. And then we're looking to tentatively go out to bid in mid-November. I think that is it.
So I think
questions.
Couple, yeah. Jonathan, I think, had a question about negative pressure airflows, and so most spaces are slightly negative in the sensitive areas that so in the exam rooms and in those areas we would do slightly negative air pressure. Traditionally, it's pretty close, but most classrooms and whatnot have a slightly are oftentimes slightly positive, but in areas that are sensitive, we look at creating a negative. Yep. So there you go, Jonathan. And I guess for some context too on the bidding. So far we have seen 8 contractors interested in the project. Now that's the ones who have expressed interest. That doesn't mean that they've been pre-qualified yet. And so the more interest we can get and the more bids, qualified bids, the likelihood is that has a direct correlation on a greater level of competition and lower prices, which equates to higher value. Just for the comparative sense in terms of where we are right now in the marketplace, the Bath project, which was the last fairly decent size, about a $50 million project with the Department of Education, bid in March of 19, and they had 3 contractors actually bid the project. And so what we have seen is a much greater degree of interest in this, and that bodes again well for us. And so we're anxious to see that continue. We think there are actually a couple more contractors that likely are interested in it too. So when one person I talked to, a contractor, said Central Maine does well with attracting contractors. Its location and the workforce in the area. So it looks like, Scott, if there are deductions needed, when would we need to determine that? I think, Scott, that's your question.
Yes.
And so that's an excellent question. So what we typically do is there's a kind of a rule of thumb that you organize the alternates, and you can kind of pick the alternates that you want after the prices come in. So let's say that prices come in, they're a little high. We need to reduce some cost from the project. We would meet together with the building committee here to look at the local only one. So some of you'll notice that some of those alternates really were in the local share of funding, and some are in the state share of funding. And so the state will have a very strong say in everything, but more so in the ones that are in the state column. And then the building committee would make recommendations about which ones that would be taken on the local side of it. So, and that will be after we receive the bids, is oftentimes when we go through that exercise.
Thank you.
So then I think, Leonard, I know we haven't had subcommittee meetings for a while, but should any of them meet, particularly the fundraising committee? And is there a new subcommittee chair since since Katie left. So I don't know if anyone is prepared to be able to respond to Leonard's question.
The school committee is going to discuss the fundraising effort at a workshop on October 7th. That's the most recent information that I have regarding that effort.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Okay.
Mark, would there be a need for, say, the sustainability or athletic fields or any of those to meet at this point?
I think the only thing that we would potentially do is review what the suggested alternates are, and I think it would be more, so I suppose, for information, so that it could be a conversation before we would have to deliberate on those. I know, for instance, there was some question about the theater and what potential reductions we were including as alternates for that, and so there may just want to be an update so that folks know exactly what that entails, so that's a possibility that we can consider what some of these systems that were impacting by the proposed deduct alternates are with the subcommittees. And so, Adam, I think what we can do is we can talk through with the administration and Karen to see if that seems to make sense and set those up.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Well, good. Well, again, this is a pretty exciting time. We meet with the Department of Education again in October, as Lisa said, the middle of October. At that time, they'll be gauging the sort of readiness to go to the subcommittee for the state board, and that really is the green light to go out to bid. So that's where we are for next steps here. So you may catch us at Harriman working a little bit late, finishing up the drawings, and you're all welcome to come over and give us a hand. But we're in the final stretch.
Socially distanced.
Yes, socially distanced, of course. And with that, we turn the meeting back over to Adam, to you to conclude any business as needed.
So I think the only other piece of business is, do we want to go ahead and finalize that October 27th date? Does that work for people? No, it works for me.
What was the date again?
Tuesday, October 27th.
Adam, that is a policy committee night for me.
Okay.
I could do something earlier, but I have policy down from 6 to 8. And I don't have to go to policy if that night works for everybody else.
We can look at switching it to another week if that works, such as the Tuesday, October 20th, or further out, the November 3rd.
Could we do it? I'm sorry. Could we do it earlier at, say, 5, and then Dr. Brown can get to a 6 o'clock meeting? Or is there a reason we do it at 6:30? Since we don't have any of the subcommittees right now, that might work.
I don't think there's anything stopping us from doing it earlier. 5 would work for me on the 27th.
That works for me also.
Adam, do you think we could meet by Zoom? I know the policy committee meets by Zoom.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any reason we couldn't meet via Zoom and plan to do a 5 to 6 and
Does
just
that
get the latest updates, which will be exciting right before we head to the state board meetings. So.
Does that work for everybody else?
Yes.
Yes, that aligns well for me, as I would be part of that policy meeting as well.
I'll send an invite out to everyone for the 27th, 5 to 6 via Zoom.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Sure. Are there any other questions or comments for Mark or Lisa before we wrap up? Hearing none,
All right.
I think that'll do it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.